Coming back, thank you again for all the information you're providing about this. This is very helpful. I learned a lot during this process as well, and now I'm thinking about looking my will, like what to do, and I have to sit down with you. Definitely.
Absolutely, Vish.
Yeah.
There is never a good enough time to look at updating or just reviewing your current estate plan.
For sure.
And for those who don't have one in place, there's never a better time to get started.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. Sooner is the better.
Absolutely.
And thinking about, hey, one day I'm going to do it. I have to do it. I know why I'm going so far, and even myself, and I can say that.
It is the easiest thing to put off because
Yes.
psychologically, nobody likes to think
about
about depressing things or come to terms with their own mortality.
Right.
But I tell people it's an investment in your family and your future generations, because at a time when somebody is dealing with an immense loss and the grief that comes with it,
Right.
you really want to do them the kindness of not having to deal with a messy estate.
Right.
Because typically people look to family members to wind up their affairs after they die. But in leaving a mess to clean up, I think I would not want to inflict that on my family. And I hope people look at it similarly.
No, for sure. And I was going to ask that question to you as well. How soon the person should start thinking about will or make a will? I think age shouldn't be the factor. I think when they acquire any asset.
Age should not be a deciding factor.
Right.
Absolutely. Even if it's a young adult
Right.
with minimal assets, you still need to have certain measures put in place, because if there is an unexpected death,
Right.
you still need that estate representative or somebody with authority to wind things up.
Yeah.
Young people are savvy in ways that we haven't really acknowledged previously, because as times change and technology evolves, the younger generations find ways to add value to those things and monetize them. It's no longer just a matter of collecting air miles or points on your credit cards or grocery outlets or what have you. There are so many newer ways of acquiring assets. They can be digital, they can be crypto. Every little thing adds up.
For sure.
If not for the value, the monetary value, you want the comfort of knowing that your personal information is still somewhat secure. It
Right.
doesn't end up in a place where it shouldn't. At least out of privacy concerns, it's important for even young adults to look into estate planning and put measures in place to make sure things are wound up easily.
So
if
it's
they
easy.
die.
So easier to say any investment you're doing it, and even you don't own the house or real estate. I think that's a good start from that time to start thinking about will and get your will made.
Certainly.
Like a significant amount which is going to be invested, right?
Absolutely. I work with a lot of young adults,
Right.
and these are people early in their careers getting started, but they're very conscious of their mindset and their future. So even if they have a little bit stashed away now and they're working on growing it,
Right.
they don't want to be waiting to reach a certain threshold
Right.
before they have estate planning and incapacity planning documents put in place. So there is a lot more awareness and enthusiasm,
That's good to hear, because
which is great to see.
which is great to hear. And I know a lot of our generation, and people don't think about will and all until 40s or 50s they become.
That's true.
Then they're thinking about I should do the will, because now they're thinking now I'm getting some issues, my health issues and everything. Now I should do it. It's very common, I guess. You can tell better what you experienced, that when people started, some kind of indication that maybe they're not going to live forever. Otherwise, we think we're going to live forever.
You're right. But more and more people with young children, young families,
Yeah.
or young families with not many extended family members here,
Right.
they tend to consider estate planning more
More
seriously
seriously.
because they want to make sure that if they die and something happens to their minor children, they need guardians or custodians ready
Yes.
to take over the care for their children if something were to happen to both of them.
Right.
I also work with a lot of older people who are more resistant
Mm.
to having an estate plan properly done up, and B, discussing those plans with their family members or people who would potentially inherit from their estates or end up administering their estates.
Yeah.
There is some reluctance and hesitation to openly talk about their assets and
Who they're going to give, who they're not going
Yes.
to give, who's their favorite child.
Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't say favorite
I'm
child,
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
but
But yeah.
the expectations of
Expectations,
family
yeah.
members,
Yeah.
older people that I have worked with, they tend to struggle with managing those expectations, which I think is what fuels the reluctance.
Got it. Got it. Well, um, that's where the state lawyer play the important role, I believe. So, what role does an estate lawyer play in the probate process, and when should an executor consider hiring one?
So, an estate lawyer has evolved substantially from, let's say, the early 2000s to where the bar is at this point. An estate lawyer who works on planning engagements, my role is not limited to just gathering information and giving clients advice on what would be the best legal strategy for them.
Right.
It goes beyond into analyzing their interpersonal relationships, the family dynamics, because those play a huge role
For sure.
in preparing a good estate plan. And if there is any tension or any strain in those relationships, it also I also become a starting point for my clients to look at alternative options. I would get questions like, okay, if given the family dynamic, the way things are at this point, and we don't want to say appoint our children or
Right.
one child as an executor or an attorney for property or personal care, what
Right.
are my other options? Who should I look at? What do you recommend?
Right.
So it goes beyond just legal strategy. It's also about minimizing the potential for litigation down the line.
Oh, for sure.
Because as a planning lawyer, my role is to also predict as much as I can if litigation could be a possibility in the future.
Right.
And if it is, mitigate that risk. Put measures in place so you don't hopefully not have to end up in that situation down the line.
For sure.
Or point out that these are certain factors that could create litigation down the line.
Litigation on the line. Okay. Well, and with that, like, can you share some tips for executors to ensure a smooth probate process?
I think the biggest tip I can give anyone in that unenviable position is get advice. Do not view this as a badge of honor, but as a full-time job that requires a lot of patience, dedication, and time. And you will be wearing, as an estate trustee, many, many hats, and you will be making some very serious decisions. Some easy, some complicated, but still serious decisions.
Right.
So walk into that process knowing that you have the ability to ask for advice if you need it,
Right.
but proceed with caution and get the advice up front. There is no downside to asking for professional advice,
Now that's
because most people don't do this on a day-to-day basis.
they're not proactive, they're more reactive. So when the problem arises, like, then they reach out to a professional, like, hey, I got into this problem, now how to solve it, right?
Exactly. And Google will not give you all the answers, ever.
Well, GPT maybe, right? I'm just kidding.
That would be the day.
Well, that's what people like think about that, like, get all this information, but there's so many scenarios, and everybody's situation is different.
Yes.
Either you're buying real estate or disposing of estate or doing, your will, execution of your will. They all have different scenarios, and so you cannot be expert of everything. Um, I'm not doing it every day. Like, if somebody is doing it every day, executor, that's a different story. They probably have the more experience to it. But nobody's doing it every
There
day.
are professional estate trustees.
Yeah, they are.
So that
professional.
is their business and that is what they do for a living. So
Right.
they obviously have the wider experience and skill set to handle different scenarios.
Yeah, so like those executors being assigned by when you're creating the will that particular executor was doing to do. But most of the time, people, in my experience, what I
Yes.
had is like some relative or spouse or son or daughter who's going to be executor. Right?
That's right.
Right?
You're absolutely right. A lot of people still prefer to keep it that way.
Yeah.
But in the planning process, I get these questions often. So I do
Right.
talk to my clients a lot about professional estate trustees, the role they can play in minimizing day-to-day obstacles and making the whole administration process a little more seamless
Right.
than a layperson handling it.
For sure.
And basically struggling.
Well, lot to plan and lot to think. But going to the one thing, like a biggest thing which you talk about litigation and everything, and litigation happens like when you have some debts in which you don't know about it, right? And the people don't know about it because most of the time people have an asset, but like sometimes they not updated their debts. Not necessarily just because the mortgage and everything you can track it, but there are some other debts like which they might not be tracking on that, right? So how does the probate process address debts and liabilities of the deceased?
Right. So when you have an estate trustee appointed,
Right.
their first order of business would be to identify the assets and liabilities.
Correct.
The assets, we have ways of tracking them. But for liabilities, estate trustees should advertise for creditors. That is, you put out advertisements either in local or regional newspapers and publications or through online court-approved services like Notice Connect is one of them. These online publications, for example, they have the ability to be circulated across a much wider range. They can reach local bar associations, law libraries, and so on and so forth, which makes it easier for creditors to see those notices and respond if they have a legitimate claim.
Is
Yeah.
there any fraud you have seen, like people who claiming the credit on the deceased and
Oh, absolutely.
there's like because I believe that's looking into with all the scams and stuff goes on. I'm just thinking about okay, what if I tell them that person took some money from me and never returned and
Oh, for sure. There
Right.
are a lot of fraudulent claims also presented, but
Right.
this is where professional advice comes in handy for
Right.
an estate trustee
yeah,
in identifying the validity of those claims.
right.
So, if, for example, an estate trustee winds up the administration, distributes the assets without dealing with a creditor, it could be personal liability imposed on this estate trustee. The CRA is another example. If you distribute or wind up the estate without getting clearance from the CRA, it's a matter of personal liability for the estate trustee. So there's always checks and balances.
For sure.
Not every claim that comes forth has to be scrutinized with some level of skepticism because there is a very high standard of care.
For sure.
So
Well, definitely, there's a lot you deal with, and there's a lot to deal for the executors and the trustee. Now I'm thinking about what happens if there are disputes among beneficiaries during probate.
it's very common.
Right.
If probate has not been secured yet and the beneficiaries are already squabbling or litigating, the court can appoint an estate trustee during litigation as a placeholder for somebody to just maintain status quo and do certain things for the estate administration, call in the assets, identify the liabilities, and take certain preliminary steps while the disputes are being resolved.
Right, right.
So it would be a neutral person, commonly not the ones named in the will or claiming to have the first right to be appointed,
Right.
but rather a third party, a neutral person.
Got it. I know the professional executors, they get paid. They have a certain fee probably. But like do the executors which be appointed as like, for example, elder son or not the elder son, it was the middle one who's going to be executor because he's more smart, more educated. Do they get paid anything extra?
Anyone who is an estate trustee in Ontario is entitled to get paid for the work they do.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So there is a piece of legislation called the Trustee Act, which defines an executor's compensation as a fair and reasonable amount.
And that what could it be? Like any
So
percentage?
that's a big question mark.
Yes.
There is no defined formula or pay grid
Right.
defined in the statute, but over the years, the courts have come up with a formula of sorts to define fair and reasonable compensation. Usually it's 2.5% of receipts and 2.5% of disbursements. It means 2.5% money coming in, 2.5% of money going out. It's commonly known or understood as the 5% rule, but the math doesn't always work that way.
Right.
But that is usually the known standard for estate trustees' compensation. There is also a small percentage variable allocated for care and management fee.
Right.
But aside from that, if this formula is applied and the beneficiaries are still challenging the amount that's claimed, then
Right.
the court will assess the claim against certain other factors,
Right.
like the size of the estate or the competence and skills shown by the estate trustee in winding it up, the amount of time it's taken,
Right.
the complexity of the issues that are involved, and overall importance of the issues to the people involved.
Yeah. No. I can imagine. Like, that's what I've imagined because there seems like a lot of work for the executors.
Oh, for sure.
And for right. So, and if they're getting compensated, because I know, like in my personal experience, with a couple of cases actually, where executors have to even take off from their work
Yes.
in order to manage all that stuff because it was so much.
It is a full-time job in itself, quite literally. And the lawmakers, in their wisdom, they incentivized the job for anyone who accepts this appointment.
Right.
Because it does place an unfair burden on family members or friends if they're expected to do this for free and often at a great personal cost.
Right. Well, I'm looking into time. I'm going to quick two questions for you. One is, could you explain the concept of dying intestate and how it impacts the distribution of assets?
Right. So dying intestate means dying without a will, which means there is no clear set of instructions on how your assets need to be distributed when you die.
Right.
There's nobody named as a representative or estate trustee. So it triggers a different set of rules to deal with that. Who would have the first right or priority to apply to become estate trustee? Who would be the beneficiaries of somebody who died without a will?
Right.
It could be a surviving spouse, it could be their children, it could be their siblings, it could be their parents, it could be more distant relatives like uncles and aunts or nieces and nephews. There is a whole lineage
Yeah.
that is traced, and ascendants and descendants, to determine who would inherit.
Yeah.
There are several scenarios that are looked at. If somebody dies with a spouse surviving but no children, or spouse plus children, or no spouse,
or from
only
the second
children.
marriage, the kids from second or previous marriage,
Exactly.
and all that stuff, right? So it's get a little more complicated that way,
Exactly.
right? So
Blood relation or
blood relations,
non-blood relation. So all of that comes into play.
for sure, for sure. Lastly, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who is about to go through the probate process in Ontario?
First of all, whether it's with a will or without a will, your first step should be looking for documentation and support for whatever information you have.
Right.
You must always keep impeccable records, because assume that they could be challenged at any point by the beneficiaries.
Right.
And you have to be able to back up your claim. And just don't hesitate to ask for professional help, because one person just cannot know everything.
Oh, for sure. Well, definitely. And that's where my segue. I know the professional who can help you and with that process. Shruthi, would you like to, how they can connect with you if they need more information?
Well, if you need more information, you can always, step one, Google my name, Shruthi Raman, or you can search by my firm name, Synergist Law, that's SYNERGYSLAW, or shoot me an email, SRAMAN@SYNERGYSLAW.com.
Perfect. So we'll make sure that we provide that information for you as well. So then you can reach out to Shruthi, who have the vast experience in these cases, which probably have you already recognizing and how much information she has about these things. And we try to keep it sound, otherwise we keep on going for 2-3 episodes for this one because it's such a vast subject. And thank you again, Shruthi, for coming over. You've always been generous in providing your support to me, as well as providing information. So anybody who needs that valuable information.
My pleasure, Vishal. Thanks for having me. It's always so nice to be sitting and chatting with you. Like you said, we could go on for hours talking about so many things.
Yes.
But that's also partly your fault, because you are one of the easiest people I know to talk to.
Well, I'm at fault, that I know, but
in a very nice way.
In a nice way. But I'll take that fault, because I like sharing things. I like distributing things and recycling the knowledge or information which I get to my clients, to my viewers. And what I need from you, the way I do the recycle this, is you can do that too by subscribing to my channel, sharing with others who might need it, and don't forget to comment. If you have any questions regarding this episode, you can comment in our YouTube channel, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, and we'll take those questions and reach out to Shruthi as well. Or we can use those ones for our future episodes. So thank you again for watching, and thank you spreading your love with me. And if you already haven't done that, as you know, that on April 26th, I'm competing in Dancing with the Stars in Easter Seals, and to raise some funds for the kids with disabilities, so we can send them a camp and so they can enjoy the normal life. And I need your help. So if you haven't, please donate or reach out to me and to give your support. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy. Bye for now. This podcast is for informational purpose only and should not be considered as financial or investment advice. Consult with your professional before making any real estate decisions.